Good afternoon, RGE members and guests. Welcome to today's webinar, COLA Considerations, the Data and Discipline Behind Determinations. Our speaker for today is Brad Briner, Treasurer of North Carolina. He also has his dream team around him, so we thank Brad for bringing your staff in on this meeting as well. But on that one, know that it's sincere when I say you've assembled a fantastic team and they really make it all happen, and we know we appreciate it. So thanks to your team there as well. I am Tim O'Connell, the Executive Director of RGEA. I'm grateful to have so many RGEA members joining us for today's webinar. We appreciate you choosing to be a member of RGEA. We are collectively strong because of you. I wish to express our gratitude to Treasurer Briner again for this. He supports so many of our endeavors that we do. He's been a great partner in so many ways, and we believe he's doing so much good work on behalf of retirees, and we are grateful for that. As an organization that values and believes in public service, we also want to just give another shout out to his team. They are public servants. They are working to serve you, and they go to work every day to do better and better. And we can see that and just appreciate them for the work that they do. Before we begin this webinar, I have a few items to cover. Each of you has been muted to help ensure the presenter can be heard. This presentation is being recorded. We will send you a link to the recording along with the PowerPoint and the follow-up email. For those of you who send questions with your registration, we have submitted them to Treasurer Briner's office, and many of them are already included in today's presentation. If you think of a question during this session, please use the Q&A button. That's the Q&A button, not the chat button, but the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom page, and the team will be responding to your questions as they come in during the Q&A period. Now to share a little bit more about Treasurer Briner. Prior to becoming Treasurer of North Carolina, Treasurer Briner was the co-chief investment officer for Willett Advisors, where he worked from 21 to 2023. Willett manages the philanthropic and personal investment assets for Mike Bloomberg. Before Willett, Mr. Briner held positions at Morgan Creek Capital, the UNC Management Company, ArcLight Capital, and Goldman Sachs. He graduated from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, as a Morehead Scholar with a degree in economics and graduated with distinction. He also has an MBA from Harvard Business School. He served on the Board of Trustees at UNC Chapel Hill and is chairman of the Investment Committee for Phillips Exeter Academy and the Board of Directors of the Boston Omaha Corporation. Mr. Briner and his wife reside in Chapel Hill with their 4 children. Welcome, Treasurer Briner.
And thank you, Tim. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys today. Thank you for having us. It's been a great partnership with RGEA. We look forward to continuing it in every way that we can and informing all of you in any ways that you need to be. Let me echo, though, what you said, Tim. I am blessed, unreasonably, honestly, to have the team around me, some of whom are with us today. So Eric Nesbitt, my Chief of Staff, Kevin Sigrist, our Chief Investment Officer, Tom Friedman, who runs the State Health Plan, and Sam Watts, who runs the retirement system, all the major heads of the divisions that we may talk about today. So we are looking forward to your questions. We wanted to do this because this is the most common question we get. And so we want to go through a bunch of data and our thinking, and then take your questions around this topic or really anything that's on your mind. We've got a series of slides that we prepared, and so let's put those up on the screen, and we'll go through those, and again, we'll take questions. I should also note that Beth Horner's on as well, and as is Loretta Beniti, who can help answer questions in real time. If you have them and you want to put them in the chat, we can answer them that way too. So we believe in alliteration around here, and hence the title, COLA Considerations, Data Discipline Behind Determinations. First, I've got to throw up, mostly so you can see my great haircuts over the years, some slides about me and what we've done. I am the youngest of 4 boys. I grew up in Dallas, Texas. I moved to North Carolina in 1995 to attend UNC. I met my wife there. You can see us on the far right. We have 4 children. We live in Chapel Hill. For me, it's always been an interest to be in the finance business and the investment business. I learned early, in part because of what happened to my family in the early 80s, the importance of the financial support in the family unit. And that's always been a priority for me, and it's one of the reasons I ran for office. One of the most important things we accomplished last year, and it's on this list, relates to that. And that's the setting up of the North Carolina Investment Authority. We'll talk about our history as a state and investment performance, which relates very much to the cost of living adjustment conversation. But our solution to that problem in the long term is the setting up of an independent state agency called the North Carolina Investment Authority. We've talked about this before. It was a major legislative push last year, and our team did a fantastic job, not just crafting the legislation, but shepherding it through. In a world where it doesn't seem anything is unanimous, this was passed unanimously by the House, unanimously by the Senate, and enacted into law last June. And so we've set that authority up, and it's off to a great start. We also, and under Tom's leadership, have made great strides here, have addressed the, frankly, insolvency of the state health plan that we inherited. We saw a $507 million deficit for 2026 that we've now closed, and a $1.4 billion one for 2027 that we are on the way towards closing. And so thanks to Tom and Beth and their team for everything they've done on that side. A couple other smaller things that do relate to how we think about running the broader department. We announced earlier this week the implementation on a full scale of artificial intelligence in the Department of State Treasurer. We'd run a trial process last year, seeing the benefits of it across two of our divisions. We wanted to make sure that we enabled all of our people across all 7 of our divisions to benefit from the productivity gains that we can see from that technology. Of course, we needed to take some time to put the appropriate guardrails in place, and so that's what's our IT team has spent the last 9 months doing. We have customized licenses that prevent training on data. We have deep training exercises across all of our team members. And now we're beginning to enjoy the fruits of that, which hopefully you will see as we help you with any concerns you have about retirement or state health plan or otherwise. And the final thing I got to point out here on what we've accomplished in the last year is we really leaned into financial literacy. As I mentioned, it was important to me personally, given what my family went through, but our team has really taken to this, and it's taken on a life of its own under Loretta's leadership, where we were proud to be recognized earlier this week with a national award from the Excellence in Financial Literacy Association, EIFL, who gave us an award for our program there. So excited about all that. And wanted to take a second to detail some of the efforts that we've got going on around this department above and beyond what we're talking about today. So what are we talking about today? The question, probably the number one question I get when I talk to retirees throughout the state is this one: when am I going to get a permanent COLA? The history of COLAs in the state can kind of be summed up in 2 eras. Up until the great financial crisis of 2008, they largely tracked inflation. Since then, they've largely tracked to 0. And there have been some bonuses and some small ones along the way since 2008, that is true, but by and large, it's 2 paradigms, 2 eras. And let's talk about why that is. If we go to the next slide, you'll see, we'll get to that in a second. Our priorities as we run the pension system: number one, to make sure the pension system is well funded. This has a bunch of components to it, and we'll disaggregate those, but first and foremost, we need to make sure the assets are there to support the promises that have already been made to you. So that's goal number one. Goal number two, go back one slide. Goal number two is to contribute and ask the General Assembly to contribute what is needed. And so we'll talk about that here in a second. And then goal number 3, which we'll get to here in a second, is to consider a cost of living adjustment within the guardrails of what we can do and what we're empowered to do. And they are 2 very different processes. We'll come to those for teasers versus Elgers. Next slide. So on that, first is the teacher system. This is the state system, so it is no surprise that the path to a cost of living adjustment goes through the General Assembly. The teasers board makes a recommendation to the General Assembly each year as to whether there are investment gains that will allow us to make a cost of living adjustment. That recommendation is sent to the General Assembly. They can take us up on that recommendation. They cannot. They can do whatever they want. Ultimately, is the General Assembly's decision, and the advice of the teasers board does carry a lot of weight in that, but it is ultimately their decision. The local government system is different. It is really an artifact of the Board of Trustees, that they get to decide what is appropriate to do for that system alone. But they are circumscribed by the same investment gains provision. We have to have investment gains to support cost of living adjustments. We'll come to some of the math around that here in a little bit, but they are very different processes. And so as you think about what goes on, different things go on in the different systems. They are correlated. They are managed similarly. They do have a different crediting rate. They do have a different funding rate. And so over time, they may diverge a little bit, but by and large, they should track each other in terms of investment gains. Next slide. So one other piece of cost of living considerations is the guaranteed nature of state pension benefits under state law and court cases that came about 40 years ago. So Social Security, on the one hand, is automatically indexed to inflation, but it is also not guaranteed by the federal government. And so when people talk about the cliff that Social Security may face, and I think we all hope and expect that it won't ultimately, that a solution will be arrived at. But if it's not, as of today, Social Security benefits will be cut by 25% in 2032. Whether that's across the board or whether we actually change that, I hope and expect we will. But that risk that exists in Social Security cannot exist within the state pension system. What is guaranteed is the existing benefit. That is not just a promise or an obligation of the pension trusts. That is a vested right under court cases previously. And so it is guaranteed not just by the trust, but also by the taxpayers. And so there's a difference in these benefits that is material that I hope everyone was already aware of, but I wanted to make sure we pointed out today. So this is going to get a little bit complicated, but let me go through it. What you're looking at today is two different calculations on the assets that we have set aside against the promises we've made. The first, the smooth line, the lighter blue, we probably should have made these colors a little bit more different so you could see it, but it's actuarial value, which is what AVA stands for, over actuarially accumulated liabilities. That's the smooth line. This is where we take the average market value over 5 years or average return over 5 years, and we tell you, and this is the number we publish broadly, how funded the pension system is. As you can see, before 2008, it was over 100% funded. Today, it's a little bit north of the 88.4 that's on there. We had a good year in 2025, but the smoothing that occurs here makes that line look pretty consistent. The other line is what's called the market value versus the actuarial liabilities. This is what we actually have in the account today versus what we owe. And so this bounces around a lot more because there's no smoothing. Two things I would point out. First is 2008 was really tough. We went from 112% or thereabouts to about 82% all in 1 year. And so that was an extraordinary loss. For those who worked in finance back then, you can't remember that. And this pension system was hit very hard by it as well. To some degree, we've been digging out of that hole ever since with varying degrees of success. The two components of that will come to separately. But you can also see that 2022 was a tough year. As you get to the right there, you'll see that it drops from well into the 90s back to about 80%. And we've been digging out of that hole ever since. We think on a market value basis, we're into the low 90s today, and that's what that more teal line shows you. So again, coming back to those priorities, the first priority is to make sure we have enough assets set aside for the promises we've already made. And we're making good progress there, but we're not to the 100% yellow line that you see on the chart. The local government system is very similar. We do not have data because we measured things differently back then, but it is a very similar track where 2022 in this regard was a very difficult year. And you see that primarily in the market value line, the teal line, where you went from 96 or so % funded to in the high 70s in the local government system. We're back into the high 80s, and this is where the difference between the teacher system and the local government system does come up. We're into the 90s in the teacher system, and we're still in the 80s in the local system. And so that divergence is present here, but we are climbing our way out of that hole. Next slide. So the two components of how these market values move are how much we send in, but how much it grows. So let's talk about how much it grows first. So what you see on the left here is an annual histogram of the returns of the teacher system over time. The yellow line is the important thing. We are trying to make 6.5%. We used to target 7.25 and then 7, but let's just stick with 6.5 for now. 6.5% is what makes the math work for the pension system. And so when we deliver more than that, we help climb out of that hole a bit. When we deliver less than that, it gets reasonably painful. And so pointing out those two particular years we talked about previously, the global financial crisis, which was fiscal year 09, and then 2022, the two big red bars, those are really hard for the pension system to deal with. As we evolve our investment strategy, we have gravitated towards an absolute focus on an absolute return of 6.5%, because that is, again, what makes the math work. So in addition to trying to extract slightly higher returns from our asset allocation in the markets, we're also trying to hone in more on a consistent return, if that's possible. We delivered just shy of 10% in fiscal year 2025. Calendar year 2026 has been a little bit bumpier. As we all know, there's some geopolitical events going on, but I'm happy to report that as we sit here today, we have made money in 2026 and outperformed both the stock and the bond market, which is a good position to be in. Who knows what tomorrow holds? It is a volatile world, but we think we're building a resilient portfolio that will deliver on these objectives. The other thing that comes up when we talk about investment performance, and it certainly was one of the big reasons behind the Investment Modernization Act, is relative performance to other high-performing state pension systems, some of which Kevin particularly knows very well, given that he was at Florida before he came here the first time. These are similarly situated pension systems. They are strong financially performing states with a dedicated commitment to funding the pension systems. So they're reasonably well funded, but they are simply much better performing than we are. And so you see these are the 5 and the 10-year trailing returns as of 2025. We have not met the 6.5% over 10 years, but Texas and Florida certainly have. There are lessons to be learned from those. There are many of those lessons that we've embedded in the Investment Modernization Act, but this is the aspiration, to be a high-performing pension system, not to take undue risk, but not to also suffer from lack of risk too. So then we bring in the other piece of the conversation around how pension systems get funded. And this is from both the employer and the employee. So the employee rate at 6% in the yellow line has been consistent for time immemorial. That has not moved. What has changed very materially is how much the employing unit puts in. And it's a similar graph on the local government side, slightly different numbers, but the pattern is the same. In the pre-GFC period, pre-2008 period, the employer contribution was below the employee contribution level. In hindsight, of course, that should have been higher, but hindsight's 2020. As we went through the global financial crisis and the implications thereafter, you see a material increase in funding ratio. And then since 2017, a consistent increase from about 8% to about 17%. So there's been a real dedication on the part of the taxpayer, the General Assembly, to trying to fix the funding ratio of the pension systems through injecting more capital into them on behalf of the employees through the employer contribution. We topped out at 17.5. The projection from here is that this maybe comes down slowly, but we want to make sure that we have enough assets in these systems to deliver on all the promises we have. And so this is the other piece of the funding formula that is really important. And I think we should all take some pride in this as North Carolinians, that we have made a consistent commitment to doing right by the retirees and by the actives in sending a lot more money into these pension systems. Most other states don't do that. Most other states just say, well, we'll deal with it later. And that's how you see pension systems down in the 60 and 70% funding levels, something that North Carolina has thankfully never done. So the guardrails for implementing a COLA on the teacher's side. The first thing we do is we retain the actuaries to do an annual valuation. They do it on that smooth basis, that actuarial value And so we know 4 of the 5 years of the return stream coming into the year, and then we get the 5th and we average those. And so over time, we recognize all the gains and losses, but we do smooth them so that we don't induce tremendous volatility into the employer contribution rate. So the actuaries do all that, and they publish our funded ratio. We expect that to be, high 80s to low 90s in the next year, starting from 88% or so the last time they reported it. So once we have that, then the second thing that we need to be aware of is that a COLA cannot exceed inflation or a maximum of nominal 4%. It also cannot increase total employer costs. And this is where the investment gains come in. So we're contributing, as the state, 17% for the employer contribution. That can't go up as a result solely of a COLA. Now, when you have investment gains, that's an easy conversation to have because those pay for it. If you don't have investment gains, it becomes really hard. So then those both go into the board recommendation. They're going to look at how funded the system is and then how much investment gains are available to pay for a COLA. They might recommend a one-time payment or a permanent one, but again, they can't approve it. That goes to the General Assembly. And then the General Assembly acts on that as they will. Our last actuarial evaluation showed an investment loss. And that's, again, amortizing the 2022 experience into over 5 years, by definition, takes 5 years. And so we'll do that again next year, where we're going to need to make material gains in 2026 to dig fully out of that hole. Over time, of course, 22 comes out of the 5-year calculation, and hopefully we will get there that way as well. So just a couple reminders before we kind of open it up here in several slides. 0 is not the goal. 6.5% is the goal. If we do less than 6.5, even if we make 6%, we're losing ground. If we make 7, we are gaining ground, but only by 0.5%. So we have set the treadmill at a reasonably quick rate. It is certainly achievable and should be over the long run. But it's not as if just making money ends up with investment gains in excess of what we needed to make. So that's the first and most important point on the investment side for people to realize is that 6.5 is treading water. 6.5 is living paycheck to paycheck. We want to actually pay down debt so that we get these systems to high 90s or at least mid 90s before we contemplate really making a push on the cost of living side. The scale is big. There are a lot of folks on these plans. And so without investment gains, it becomes a big ask to get an appropriation of this scale. So a 2% COLA costs about $1.2 billion. And we pay that down about over a decade. So these are big moves. They sound small when you talk about a 2% cost of living adjustment, but by dollars, $1.2 billion on a $34 billion state budget is a lot of money. So we want to be conscious of that, and that's where the investment gains make this conversation so much easier for the General Assembly to have. Next slide. The other piece is that these are extremely long-lived promises. Of course, we have pension obligations that will exist for, we think, another 125 years, and that's if we stopped issuing them today, which no one plans to do. So these are very long-term promises, and going back to one of the first slides, they are upward only. So we cannot adjust downward. We will not adjust downward, unlike Social Security. So we have to make sure that we respect that boundary and that we plan for the very long term because it's essential that we live up to these promises over the full period that we've made them, which we think is at least 125 years from now. And so I guess getting to the final piece of the puzzle, the question that naturally falls out, okay, you had a good year in 2025. How much do you need to make in 2026 to deliver investment gains as the actuaries say them? And the answer is on the next slide, and that's roughly 16%. So to get to a position of actuarial gains, which will allow us to, without reservation, ask for a COLA adjustment at the General Assembly and make one at the local government board, we would need to make about 16% in 2026. The stock market as of today is up 2% year to date. We're doing a little bit better than that, but 16 is a big bar to get over. And a lot of that has to do with we're still wearing 2022. We are still amortizing those losses. Once we get through those, this number comes down, it becomes easier, but we've got to fill that hole still. So we have about 143 billion right now in all the pension systems. So it's a little bit better than when we put these slides together, but we do have some work to do to get where we want to be. So that concludes my prepared remarks. I would love to take questions, and we've got the full team here to help in any way that I can't answer.
Thank you, Treasurer. I've got a couple for you.
Sure.
One, someone has asked, are the funds combined, teasers, Elgers, how are they managed? Two different pots or one?
Well, they're legally separate, so they exist separately, but they are managed jointly. So when we make an investment, when we bought the office building in downtown Raleigh that people may have read about, that is jointly owned by all the pension systems in proportion to their assets. And so from an investment perspective, they're managed identically, but from a legal perspective, they're different trusts and they have different boards and all those things.
Okay. A couple questions were in the Q&As and earlier. Is the not having a budget approved impacting the pensions at all?
Not yet. So we were the beneficiaries, and we were all collectively the beneficiaries of a mini budget last year, where they approved the change in funding into the pension system in one of the, I think it was last June, one of the bills that was run. So the General Assembly consistently has demonstrated that pension contributions are a priority, and they did that again last year in the mini budget. So it hasn't affected us in that way. Now, they're second order. If you have a raise, then you have more in the pension system and other things that you could, I suppose, argue. But no, we were pretty pleased that the General Assembly made this a priority in what was a tough year to get anything done.
Okay, this is a fun actuarial question, but will the reduced number of state employees making public service a career, therefore not retiring, impact current retiree benefits?
I might phone a friend here to Sam to ask that. There are a lot of different assumptions that you would need to think through to answer that question. But I think they probably offset each other. Sam, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, let me give you a couple points to think on that. When we're fully funded, when we're funded properly, the benefits accrued to current employees are paid by current taxpayers. Anytime we're underfunded, which is where we are now, future taxpayers have to pay that difference. So you're kicking the can down the road proverbially. And that's another really great reason why we focus on funding and keeping up to date. And unlike other states, we have a reasonably short 15-year horizon for paying off our liabilities. And that's what we try to do. So we don't think it's a major long-term crisis for us. Now, it does mean that we have to adjust from year to year what the contribution rate will be. So if you have a lot fewer employees over a short amount of time, then the contribution rate paid by the employers is going to go up because you're dividing you need an X amount of dollars, you're dividing it over a smaller number of people. But it's not really a long-term problem for us. It can be a short-term.
Thanks, Sam. You did well on that one. That was a tough one, so good job. How about, I got a question from Scott, and this is one we often get. Please explain why the teaser system is allowed COLAs when justified, but the Elgers does not. And I think you spoke to this some, but maybe you could clarify a little bit more for Scott here.
Sure, and Sam, please add on to my answer here. The processes are different in that the Elgers board controls the local government system in a way that the teasers board does not control the output of the teaser system, but the inputs are the same. So there's a couple different things going on, and the one I pointed out, but I would want to point out again, is we do have a divergence between the teacher system and the local government system that has emerged and could grow wider. So while they're managed from an investment perspective identically, they are not from a crediting rate perspective and from an employer contribution rate perspective. So the teacher system has a lower crediting rate, is assuming less payments in the future as a result, and has a higher contribution rate, which means it's assuming more money in the future, which to my mind means teachers will have a higher funding ratio over time than the local government system. We don't have to do anything about that right now, but people should be aware that those systems may diverge in the future, which would lead to one offering COLAs and the other not.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pretty common question, so I appreciate
Yeah.
you answering it so directly. Here's one, and I think you just shared I think I've read a recent financial piece you did, but do you invest in cryptocurrency? If so, is the rumor that NC took a loss true?
Well, so there's a fact that we own the S&P index, and the S&P index has a very small amount of companies in it that do own crypto. So as you follow that logic through, we do have some very small crypto exposure, and therefore we did take a very small loss on that crypto exposure. But it's not that we bought Bitcoin directly or anything like that. It's that if you own Amazon or if you own Tesla, you own some Bitcoin, and so do we. Digital assets are a fascinating topic. We are engaged in discussions around what we're doing as a state with them all the time. I'm chairman of the Banking Commission, so it comes up there, as you might imagine. The truth is, I don't think we've figured out exactly what they are. And I mean that from a performance perspective. How do they behave? What is the actual point? And until we can understand that, it would be hard to advocate for them in any direct way or any material way in the pension system. They have been advocated as a store of value in tough times. And well, sure enough, we had a war. We have a war going on right now, and Bitcoin has not held in value during that period. So again, we're not quite sure the role, but that doesn't mean we're uninterested in following it. We certainly are following it.
No, thank you. Thank you for the answer. This is a question from Wayne. And what is the current Elgers employer contribution rate, and has it changed in recent years?
I'm going to ask Sam to give you to the decimal point.
Okay.
I'm not going to try to quote the decimal point without grabbing a bunch of things to look it up, but it's running close to 17% for law enforcement, close to 16% for general employees. I think it's relevant to say that we're projecting for it to go up a slight tick just one more year. And then we've got projections of the employer contribution rate approaching a declining pattern, which I think is a relevant. Maybe I can transition to another point I think the treasurer wants us to make here, in that, we're hoping to work with all the stakeholders, all the local government officials, so that as we're moving into a declining contribution rate environment, that we allow the rate to go down at a lower pace, a slower pace than it could, in order to pay COLAs sooner rather than later. In fact, that's a discussion that we'll have at our Board of Trustees meeting in just a few weeks. That very point that former Representative Hurley Thornburg has made eloquently and raised as an option she wanted us to bring to the table, which we are bringing to the table. But it does matter. The contribution rate for local governments has to be predictable, and we have to plan ahead because they have a lot less flexibility in adjusting taxes than the General Assembly does. They can't move things as quickly, so we have to be very careful and diligent.
Okay.
Maybe the other piece to add on to that. So we did make a policy change earlier in the year around what's called our ECRISP, Employer Stabilization Policy. What the prior policy did was essentially said, until you're 120% funded or so, you couldn't contemplate a COLA. Well, we changed that to allow, as Sam suggested, once we are on the path towards lowering the employer contribution rate, we can now consider them. And so that is a big change. It does not mean a COLA is tomorrow, but it means that it's possible, which is a big change from where we've been the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. Sam, can I ask a follow-up and if you can encapsulate? I know there was a study done recently where you all looked at the employee contribution rate and changing that. Can you share just briefly what the findings were from that?
Sure. Employee contribution rate has been set in statute since the early 70s at 6% of pay. And so a few things, it's probably been in statute so long that it may be possibly interpreted as a vested right for employees that would be difficult to change for existing people. So you could change for new hires. That would be would create inequities in the system. But it also doesn't yield the returns that employers think that it would, because 40% of employees don't make it to a vesting period, or they're short-termers and they take a refund. You take a refund, you get your contributions back. If you've increased the contributions, you're losing more than you're keeping in the pension fund. In short, and it also doesn't really. There's an obscure federal tax law provision that means you also end up paying more for the remaining employees if you're increasing contribution rate. So the department and the treasurer has never been in favor of increasing it above 6%, and the treasurer has taken a strong stance saying it needs to stay where it is. Now, but here's a really good policy consideration that why that also makes sense. The actual cost of the benefit is about 12% of payroll each year, and so when we're fully funded, and we're going along at the right clip, employees are paying for half of it, employers are paying for half of it, and that seems equitable.
Okay, thank you. That's a great answer, Sam. Thank you. So I've got a question. Someone's asking, is there an upper limit on the amount of monthly retirement pay?
Yes.
This is from Douglas.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
There's a federal limit, a limit in federal law called a 401A17 limit, and there's another limit with a different federal law number, and one is on the amount of money that you can put that can be taken contributions in, and then the other one is on the amount that's paid out to the pensioner. And so once you hit the limit in North Carolina, you go into a different benefit program called a qualified excess benefit arrangement, where the contributions are paid by the former employer back to the person. Now, we only have 23 people in that category across 1 million members, so it's a very small universe, and so we don't usually talk about it or make a big deal out of it. But there's a very small number of folks that do hit that limit, the payout.
Okay, that's actually, thanks, Sam. I got a question from Bob, and you gave the roll-up answer to it, but Bob is asking, what is the approximate size and numbers of people in the teasers and Elger systems?
Well, overall, you're looking around 400,000 retirees at a given point. You're looking around 350, 400,000 employees. That can vary from year to year, but then we always use 1 million people because you have beneficiaries and other folks that are members of the family of those retirees. So we're impacting 1 million people every year.
Big.
Million two, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, thank you. Here's one. Can you explain how AI factors into your work with your retirement benefits? Somebody's reading up on y'all.
Doing some good PR. The artificial intelligence will touch everything we do in different ways. And so whether it's the investment authority looking at it from an investment perspective, there are some very interesting businesses being built over there, or from a diligence perspective on the investments we will make. But also in the benefits processing side, we can use artificial intelligence to help our people be more efficient, to help reduce call wait times, to do a lot of things to help with being more efficient with taxpayer money, and frankly also helping our employees enjoy their jobs more, where they can outsource to AI some of the mundane, detail-oriented tasks that are tedious and get to the ones that they really love, and that's helping people. So AI will touch everything we do. We're very careful with it, and we've got some real guardrails in place to ensure that it doesn't run amok. But you should expect us to become more efficient across everything we do, and AI is going to be part of that.
Okay, thank you. Tom, I've got a question for you. Do you envision an increase in our healthcare premiums in 2027?
So for 2027, I would think about it a couple different ways. One, Medicare Advantage rates, final rates, will be due out in a couple weeks. We intend to keep the premium for individual coverage at $0 for the base Medicare Advantage plan. So there'll be no change to that. The change to the dependent premiums, we should know that in a couple weeks, and we'll talk about that at the June board meeting when we get that renewal from Humana. And then on the 70/30 plan for the non-Medicare retirees and the 70/30 plan for the Medicare retirees, that will remain premium free for individuals as well. Dependent premiums, we expect to go up a little bit. We're kind of waiting on a few factors. One, what do raises look like and at what time frame they come in? Some provider negotiations that are taking place now, and ensuring that we get the 5% increase from the General Assembly in a time frame that we can implement. So there will likely be increases in the premiums. We are trying to keep them as absolutely small as we can. I don't anticipate a world where they look like they did last year, but we're being mindful of those kind of key factors going forward. And I think we're trending in the right direction to have pretty favorable news there.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Here's one coming back to the retirement system. It's from Jim. Is there any consideration of moving towards a hybrid retirement system, part defined 401k type like other neighboring states?
So I'll lead off and then I'll pass it to Sam. Sam alluded to 40% of our members never make it to 5 years. And as a matter of employee benefits, that's not a great benefit for those 40%. And it's probably acting as a disincentive for people to come work, at least for short periods, for state government. And that's a miss for North Carolina. So we've been thinking a lot about what we offer our employees and how can we make that better without taking away what people have or the options that they currently have. Can we create more options for them that would be better for them? And so we're beginning to think that through. I've asked Sam to take the lead on that. So Sam, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Our directions from the treasurer are to think through what it takes to make the retirement system that everyone wants to have. What is the thing that meets our mission the best? How do we serve the needs of employers, protect the interests of retirees, and create a system that remains to be low cost and high value for everyone? We probably have some news in a few weeks about the annual cost review of the cost of the retirement system. I think the numbers are going to show that we actually reduced our cost among all retirement systems administration in the world. I think we're $90-some below the average cost of running similar systems. So we have ways and things that we are looking at to improve that are still going to be keeping us within those cost constraints. And I think it's a laudable goal. I'm glad the treasurer's asked us to take a look at making the retirement system that everyone wants to be in.
That's great.
Thanks, Sam. The other thing I'd add just quickly on that is this crowd will be familiar with, there's some provisions within the current retirement system that encourage behaviors that are not great, right? We essentially ask people to retire after 30 years, financially at least. And we wouldn't, if you'd redesigned it, want that to be in place. We wouldn't want to encourage people who are great state employees who want to keep working to go do something else because of a retirement provision. So there are things like that that are worth exploring in the context of the broader discussion we can solve those too if we put a great proposal together. And so Sam's got a big task ahead of him. He's got a capable team backing him up on this, but we think it's something worth chasing because it would benefit so many people in North Carolina.
Okay. And then coming down, this is from a wonk, so get ready for it, okay? You got a pension wonk asking a question. They're asking about the amortization between 12 to 15, and they're saying, why not 18? So who wants that one?
I'm happy to take it, and Sam can correct where I go off. So 12 has been the number for some time. 12 is on the shorter end, very shorter end of normal, as I'd think about it. There are those who are shorter. There are some in the single digits. And what this relates to, for those who don't speak pension math, is how quickly you pay off your mortgage, essentially. So the debt that we owe the pension system, how quickly are we going to pay that down? It was 12 years. We've just changed it to 15 years. We thought that was appropriate because we see almost every other state, but for a couple exceptions, at that 15-year level. And it allows us to be, I think, a little bit more equitable across generations by doing that.
That's great. I like the mortgage comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a tough one, and but I know you can answer it. Someone's saying, this is from Dale, I've lost over 50% purchasing power since I retired. Can I expect any recovery?
That's the hardest question I get as treasurer across everything we do. As I talked about, there was an expectation that was built over a lot of years that COLAs would match inflation because that's what they did up until 2008. It was never a legal obligation. It was never in anyone's materials, but after enough years of doing it, I understand why people would expect it. And that changed in 2009. And you can, I hope, understand a little bit why that changed. I'm not asking you to like it. And so we are focused on getting back to a point where we can do that regularly. But will you ever be made whole for the last 18 years? Not fully. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I think we can do incrementally better next year and the year after, and we'll begin to make some progress. But 18 years is a big hole. And I recognize what people have been through, and I again wish we could do something about it today, but we are doing our best to get to a better track, and I think we will.
Okay. Thanks for answering the question.
Of course.
I've got one. This is just from DJ. Thank you and your team for taking the time to explain all this to us. It's tough since our pension checks have lost so much value over the years, but having a better understanding of the why helps some. So
sure. I understand. Thanks.
You're coming in. I'm going down the scrolling here. So here's a good one if we can answer this. And it's a question. Bonuses are less costly than a COLA percentage, correct?
Correct. Bonuses are one time and COLAs are forever.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit more on the math on those, Treasurer, please? Just so the why behind that a little bit more.
Sure. So on our slides, we alluded to that kind of every 1% is $600 million or so for a permanent COLA, because that, is for the whole 125 years that we're going to be paying that. Whereas the one-time bonus is just a percentage of current benefits, which is not recurring the following year. And so it's an order of magnitude difference. What is it, like 20 to 1, Sam?
Yeah, so
something like that.
Let me oversimplify the math. Because if you imagine walking into the General Assembly, into the Appropriations Chair's office, and you say, hey, we want to pay for a COLA out of appropriations, which is what the last COLA was paid for out of state appropriations. We want you to pay for this. And they're going to say, how much? You say, well, it's about $100 million a year for the next 15 years. Versus going in and saying, well, can we do a bonus? Can we do a one-time bonus for retirees? About 50 million this year out of non-recurring funds. It becomes a much different conversation to have with the legislature or with local governments. I said, what does it take? What can we do? And it is absolutely true that the one-time bonuses do not make up for, lost value to inflation. But as the treasurer alluded, that was never the legal promise made. And we are, moving toward a pathway where we can bake in more regular COLA, cost of living adjustment increases, paid for out of investment gains to the fund. I mean, that's ultimately the right answer, which is, I think, genesis of a lot of things that are coming under it. The General Assembly says we cannot pay for cost of living adjustments out of appropriations every year. So that leaves us to do it out of the pension fund. And now that we have the assumed rate of return set correctly, we're managing the fund in different ways. We're looking forward with a slightly longer amortization period. We should get to a point where the system pays for itself, or adjusts for itself, and we're self-supporting with regard to generating cost of living adjustments.
Okay. I've got two, and I'm going to say this is probably not fair, but I'm going to ask them. But it has to do, will the state of North Carolina ever consider eliminating state taxes on state retirement income? And I've got another one following on the Bailey Act. So I know that's a little political, but thoughts on that?
Let me bail you out on the personal treasure.
Yeah, sorry to throw you.
So
that was a heater. I know it was a heater. I apologize.
The question of reopening the Bailey exemption for state employees comes up every year, and it's a valid question. And it is, if you look at in the context of state appropriations, state revenue, it is a very, very expensive long-term proposition to do. And it is not the treasurer's office determination to make that, nor the retirement system determination. That's not something we actively engage in a pro and con on that. But we do see the numbers, and we see the math, and we have to acknowledge that just the sheer expense of it. Now, what has happened over the last few years is the tremendous lowering of the income tax rate, period, and the increase of standard deductions. So if you're taking the standard deduction, you're as a state retiree, you're paying a lot less than people were paying 10 to 15 years ago for the same benefit amount at a lower rate with a higher deduction. So that's it. The tax burden has lifted, but not in that way, not in the same way that's frequently requested by the advocates of that policy.
Okay, thanks. That might have been unfair, but I appreciate you all asking or answering the question. I've got one here, a little bit of praise for y'all. Thanks so much for the work you and your department is doing. Hopefully NC recognizes the huge steps you have made in such a relatively short time. And I will say, we have here at RGEA, we watch the details, and we are very pleased the direction y'all are moving things. So that's my editorializing a little bit, especially I think I owe you one for throwing that Bailey Act question at you. So
Thank you, Tim. I mean, as I alluded to begin, and I'm sincere, I mean, the people on this call and the people who work for the people on this call are what make all of it happen. And so they are outside the spotlight, but they're the ones who are making it happen. And we're just so blessed to have them as a state.
Okay, I think I'm going to add two more for you. And Kevin, you could probably answer this one because it's a Florida specific. Has NC considered DROP, D-R-O-P, deferred retirement option plans like Florida and some other states offer?
So let me grab that one before Kevin.
Thank you. I was
Kevin weighs in on it.
Yeah.
So we look at drop options every year. Every year people bring it to us and say, we'd like to do a drop. And we say, drop is very, very expensive. It is the most expensive thing you can do as far as a return to work policy. There are any number of things that you can do to make pension reforms and pension changes that will achieve the same objective without the same level of expense and risk of a drop program.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't familiar with that term, so I appreciate that. All right. I think we have covered the gamut of the questions. I want to thank you once again for giving so much of your time today. It really was great to have you all on this. So you've got representatives of the health system here, the retirement system, Just a great team here answering these questions for us. We are very, very grateful for your time. And just to close this out a little bit, we've got our next webinar that's coming up. And let me try to find that. Daryl, can you help me on that? Our next webinar, please.
Yes, I can. The next webinar, for your information, is on May 20th at the same time, 12:30 p.m. It's on a Wednesday, and it's entitled When the Rules Change, Navigating Aging in Today's World. And it will be presented by Anna Watkins of Kildare Counseling. And you must register by Sunday, May 17th for that webinar. So please be sure and join us for that one.
All right.
Great. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Daryl. We will be sending a survey out. So if you participated today, we'd love to know what you thought. So look for the survey. We'll be embedding the slide presentation and the link to the video. Treasurer, once again, thank you for your time today. We know how busy you are. We appreciate the great work that you all are doing, and we're thankful.